Today I will be going over an example where we're going to solve an equation that has variables on both sides. So this is the example we have here. It's negative 31 minus 4x equals negative 5 minus 5 parentheses 5x plus 1. So the first thing I'm going to do anytime I have parentheses is I'm going to use a distributive property. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute my multiplier, which is negative 5, inside each one of my terms. And that will give me negative 31 minus 4x equals negative 5, and a negative 5 times a positive 5x is a negative 25x. A negative 5 times a positive 1 is just negative 5. Again, this was our distributive property, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. We use the distributive property. It's a little blurry. Let me see if I can zoom it. There we go. And then we look at combining like terms. And our like terms, if we have any like terms on the left, which we don't, this is a negative 31, this is a negative 4x. Notice this one doesn't have a variable and this one does, so therefore they're not like terms. They don't have the same variable to the same power. Then I look at the right side of the equation and I see that I have these like terms here, the negative 5 and this negative 5, so I need to combine those. If I combine those like terms, I get negative 31 minus 4x equals negative 25x. And then combining negative 5 and negative 5 gives me a negative 10. Remember, if two numbers have the same sign, we're going to add them and keep the sign. So therefore 5 plus 5 is 10. They were both negative, so I have a negative 10. And this was combining like terms. We then look at the variable terms, which are these two. And from these two terms, I'm going to add or subtract the variable term that has the smallest coefficient. So between negative 4x and negative 25x, I'll write that down, negative 4x and negative 25x. This one's more negative, so this is smaller. If I were to be looking at the number line, here's my number line, here's 0, negative 4 is somewhere over here, negative 25 is somewhere all the way over here. Okay, so the farther to the left, the smaller the number is. So between these two, the one that has the smallest coefficient or smaller coefficient would be the negative 25x. This one is smaller, has a smaller value coefficient. So therefore I'm going to add 25x to both sides. I do this because I like to work with positive coefficients in front of the x once I'm done doing this move. So I'm going to go ahead and add 25x to both sides. Draw my line, keep everything together. Okay, didn't do anything to this, so bring it down. Negative 4x plus 25x, they have different signs, so I have to take the difference. Again, if you're not too comfortable with positives and negatives, I let you know you could still use a Desmos calculator, or just know that you are subtracting, right? So it's 25 minus 4, so that would be 21x. Bring the equal sign down. This becomes 0, so I don't write it again once it's 0. So I'm going to bring this down. Okay, now we have a simple equation with the variable on one side. We're going to use inverse operations like we did here. So using inverse operations, I still do add or subtract first. So remember, we're sticking to add or subtract first. I still have to add or subtract. I have minus 31 here, so I'm going to add 31. That'll get me closer to having x alone on one side. But if I add 31 on one side of the equation, I better add it to the other side. That's our property of equality. Okay. So I draw my line. This becomes 0. Bring this down because I didn't do anything to it. Bring the equal sign down. And now 31 minus 10, right? Or negative 10 plus 31. Different signs, we're really just taking the difference. So it's 31 minus 10, which is just 21. And beautiful. It's going to go in there evenly. The next inverse operation is to do division. Because anytime I have a number in front of a variable, that's multiplication. And so I'm really multiplying x by 21. So the next set of inverse operations are multiplication and division. But since we're multiplying, the inverse is to divide. So I'm going to go ahead and divide. And if I divide by 21, I get x, because 21 divided by 21 is 1, equals, and then 21 divided by 21 is just 1. So my answer is a positive 1. So many steps. Make sure you explain it and you actually write it down. So how would I explain this problem? I would do it in writing. I would say I first use the distributive property. So this would be an explanation that I could write down. Used the distributive property. To multiply the negative 5 with 5x and positive 1. Then I had to combine like terms. Namely, negative 5 and negative 5 on the right side of the equal sign or of the equation. Lastly, I had to use inverse operations to isolate the variable x. My final answer is x equals 1. This is a very thorough explanation, so I expect you to do this when I need you to write about it. Please give me your logical steps pinpoint anything that you had to do, like if you had to distribute, what did you have to distribute? If you had to combine like terms, which ones were the like terms? Okay. There you go. I hope this helps.